Welcome to the deep dive. You know the drill. You give us the sources, and we pull out the nuggets that really matter, the surprising insights and aha moments that get you smart fast without the information overload.
Exactly. It's about making complex topics accessible and giving you a real understanding of what's important.
And today we're digging into something you, our listener, flagged for us, a 2000 paper called the Aptitude Achievement Function, an aid for allocating educational resources with an advanced placement example. Now, that title might sound a bit dense, but trust me, what this paper uncovers has some really fascinating real-world implications.
Yeah, what's fascinating here is the core question it tackles.
Hmm.
How does a student's potential, as seen in tests like the PSAT, connect to their actual academic accomplishments,
Sure.
particularly in advanced placement courses?
Right.
And maybe even more crucially, how can understanding this connection help schools make better decisions about where their resources actually go?
Right. So as someone who loves to learn, you want to grasp this without getting lost in jargon. Our mission in this deep dive is to break down this relationship between PSAT scores and AP exam results.
Uh-huh.
We're going to explore how this link can be used to guide students toward the right courses, maybe get a clearer picture of how schools are performing, and understand the bigger picture of educational successes and the challenges that remain. We'll be using specific examples from the paper to keep it grounded. Okay, let's untack this, starting with AP itself.
Okay, let's begin by looking at the advanced placement program. The paper highlights that it's genuinely been a remarkable success story in American education.
It really has. Think about it. Where it started as a way for, a select group of students to take college-level courses in high school and earn credit has just exploded in popularity.
Mm,
Participation has doubled roughly every 10 years. Now, over half of all high schools in the U.S. and about a third of college-bound seniors are involved. That's a massive expansion, isn't it?
it really is. And it's interesting how widely accepted AP is. The paper mentions that no matter where you fall on the spectrum of opinions about American public schools, from strong criticism to staunch support, AP seems to be something almost everyone agrees is a good thing.
Absolutely. And the authors suggest a key reason for this enduring success. AP has stayed focused on the core mission of strong subject content, driven by a real partnership between high school teachers and college professors.
Right.
It's been less about following the latest educational trends and more about solid academics.
However, the paper also points out that AP is increasingly becoming high stakes. We're seeing more states getting involved, offering financial aid for exam fees, sometimes even mandating that high schools offer AP courses.
Yeah, and training too.
There's also growing support for teacher training in AP subjects. Exactly.
And it's moved beyond just academics, hasn't it? The paper touches on some of the legal challenges that have arisen, looking at whether admissions policies that give extra weight to AP credits might be unfair if access to these courses isn't equal for all students, particularly minority students.
Yeah.
This really brings the issue of equitable access into the conversation, which leads us to the heart of the paper.
Which is the relationship between aptitude and achievement. The authors discuss how a measurable link exists between tests that assess developed abilities, like the PSAT and SAT, and tests that measure academic accomplishment in specific subjects, like AP exams.
And this isn't just a theory, right? The paper emphasizes that this relationship is built on actual data from the College Board through their various reports and tables that connect PSAT and AP
It's
scores.
particularly insightful is their discussion around the SAT. While it was initially designed or thought to measure like inherent intelligence, our understanding of it has evolved.
Yeah.
Now, we see it as reflecting a mix of both natural talent and the effects of learning and environment. It's, both nature and nurture at play.
But even with that nuanced view, the paper highlights a significant linear trend, especially between how a student scores on the math section of the PSAT and their likelihood of getting a 3 or higher on the AP Calculus AB exam. They even refer to an older study that illustrates this quite clearly.
And this real-world connection is what the whole paper hinges on. The authors state that their goal is to use this link to better understand achievements within the AP program, like the inspiring story of Jaime Escalante,
Yeah, we'll get to that.
to evaluate how different schools are performing, and ultimately to provide evidence-based insights for making smarter decisions about how educational resources are allocated.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting. The paper delves into the story of Jaime Escalante at Garfield High School, the school that inspired the movie Stand and Deliver. For those who might not know, Garfield was a high school in a tough inner city neighborhood with a predominantly Latino student population.
And in 1986, something truly remarkable happened there. The paper points out that 129 Garfield students took the AP Calculus AB exam, and an astonishing 85 of them, or 66%, passed.
66%.
Yeah, that put Garfield High School fourth in the entire nation for the number of students passing that particular AP exam.
It's a truly incredible statistic, and the paper breaks down Escalante's success into two key components. First, his ability to persuade students to take on this very challenging course.
The recruitment part.
Exactly, the recruitment. And second, his exceptional skill in teaching them the complex material well enough to actually pass the rigorous exam.
So to really grasp the significance of Escalante's impact, the authors conduct what they call a normative analysis. They establish some baseline assumptions, such as that Garfield's student population on average would show the same relationship between PSAT and SAT scores. It's a general distribution of scores and the same typical connection between PSAT scores and AP performance as students nationwide. They also assume, kind of as a starting point, that Escalante was initially recruiting the most academically promising students at Garfield.
And based on these national averages and assumptions, the prediction was that around 53 students from Escalante's class would be expected to score a 3 or higher on the AP Calculus exam.
But the actual result was 85 students passing. That's 32 more students than the numbers would have predicted.
32 more.
The paper dubs this difference the Escalante effect, and they attribute it to his remarkable teaching and his successful efforts in recruiting students who might not have otherwise considered themselves capable of taking on AP Calculus.
Right.
So the big takeaway here is that Escalante wasn't just working with, naturally gifted kids. His efforts produced 32 more successful calculus students than the aptitude data suggested was even possible. That's a powerful statement about the impact a dedicated teacher can have, isn't it?
Absolutely. And the recruitment aspect is particularly revealing. The paper references data showing that nationally, only a small fraction of students with lower PSAT scores below 60 and even fewer below 50 typically enroll in AP Calculus.
Right, very few.
But Escalante managed to attract students with scores in these lower ranges, and a significant number of them still passed. It really challenges the assumption that only students with already high aptitude can succeed in these advanced courses.
Then the paper looks at what occurred after Escalante left Garfield in 1991. By 1997, the number of students earning a passing grade in AP Calculus had plummeted to just 19.
Just 19.
Yeah, which is less than 3% of the graduating class. A huge drop.
And this wasn't just isolated to AP Calculus, was it? The paper notes a consistent decline in the school's overall standardized math achievement scores,
That's right.
dropping from the 53rd percentile back in '87 down to the 24th percentile by 1998. SAT mathematics scores also showed a similar downward trend.
And what's quite telling is that when the authors applied their predictive model to this new distribution of student ability in 1997, again assuming a high rate of recruitment into AP Calculus, the prediction was for around 24 students to pass.
Wow.
Which is remarkably close to the actual number of 19 who did pass. It demonstrates a consistency. The AP results aligned with the overall shift in the student body's measured math aptitude.
So the miracle at Garfield wasn't necessarily about defying aptitude altogether, but rather Escalante's extraordinary ability to inspire and effectively teach students who might not have seemed like obvious candidates for AP based on their PSAT scores alone.
Exactly.
His departure really underscored the profound impact of that exceptional educator. So we've seen how one exceptional individual can dramatically impact AP success. Now let's look at how the aptitude-achievement relationship plays out in very different school environments, starting with a high-performing suburban school.
Okay. The paper then contrasts Garfield with La Canada High School, a suburban school in a more affluent area that's known for its high levels of participation in AP courses.
Right. The paper mentions that in 1998, La Canada had an average of 2 AP exams taken per graduating senior. Their average SAT math score for the 232 students who took it that year was a very high 605.
Impressive. So the authors then used a more recent set of data on the PSAT-AP relationship from a larger sample of students in 1997 to make predictions for La Canada. Again, assuming that all students with sufficient aptitude were encouraged to enroll in AP Calculus.
And the prediction was, what? That La Canada had a student population with the potential for 138 students to pass AP Calculus, assuming their teaching was around the national average level of effectiveness.
However, the actual number of students who passed that year was 64.
Only 64.
Yeah, so there's a significant gap between the potential and the reality. The paper suggests a couple of key reasons for this difference. One is simply the competition among high-achieving students at a school like La Canada to take a variety of other challenging AP courses.
Oh, that makes perfect sense. If you're a really strong student in a school with lots of AP options, you might choose to take AP Physics or AP English Literature alongside, or even instead of focusing solely on AP Calculus.
Right. And another crucial factor appears to be Canada's strategy of very selective enrollment in AP Calculus. The paper points out their remarkably high pass rate of 97%,
97%.
suggesting they're primarily enrolling students who are almost certain to succeed in the course.
So while Escalante's approach at Garfield was about broadening access and supporting students who might not have initially seemed like AP material, LaCanada seems to be prioritizing ensuring almost everyone who takes the class passes. It's a different strategy.
Exactly. The authors suggest that Canada's AP Calculus program could potentially be larger given the underlying aptitude of their student body. But their current approach effectively concentrates resources on students with a very high probability of success. Now, the paper takes us to a completely different context.
Which is the public school system in Detroit. The paper highlights that Detroit schools are highly segregated, with a predominantly African-American student population, and that fewer students there typically take the SAT or PSAT compared to students in suburban districts.
Right. In 1997, out of approximately 5,000 graduating students in Detroit, only 58 passed the AP Calculus exam. Now, on the surface, that might seem like a very low number, but the paper stresses the importance of considering the available pool of students in Detroit who might realistically be prepared for AP-level work.
Because fewer students in Detroit take the PSAT or SAT, the authors had to use alternative data, right? Scores from the Michigan State High School Proficiency Test and the Metropolitan 7 test.
Exactly. To create an estimate of the overall math abilities of Detroit's student population. This estimation placed their average math abilities significantly below the national average.
Right.
So, based on this estimated ability distribution, the authors then calculated how many Detroit students could potentially pass AP Calculus if all students with sufficient aptitude were encouraged to enroll. This yielded a number around 297 students.
Wow, 297 potential.
But when they factored in a more realistic rate of recruitment, based on national averages for students with similar estimated ability levels, the prediction dropped considerably to only 26 passing students.
Only 26 predicted with average recruitment, and the actual number was
The actual number of students who passed in Detroit was 58.
58.
So while still a smaller number compared to Canada, this suggests that Detroit schools were actually doing a better job of either identifying and recruiting students for AP Calculus than the national average for schools with similar overall ability levels, or that their instruction was more effective, or perhaps a combination of both.
Interesting. So they were exceeding the prediction based on average recruitment.
Yes. The paper also points out that AP Calculus in Detroit tends to be concentrated in a few specific, more selective high schools, like Cass Technical, Renaissance, and Martin Luther King.
Ah, okay.
And within these selective schools, the pass rates were actually quite respectable, which makes sense given their more rigorous admissions criteria.
This brings up the difficult reality of triage decisions that schools often have to make when allocating limited resources, doesn't it?
It does. The paper highlights that as a student's PSAT math score decreases, their likelihood of passing AP Calculus also decreases, and quite significantly, once you drop below a certain score, like 55 on the PSAT math.
So schools are constantly weighing that investment, right? Offering these advanced courses to students with a lower probability of success versus the potential benefits.
Exactly, weighing it against the potential benefits for those students and the broader goals of the school system. The paper suggests that both Detroit and Canada, albeit in very different ways, are essentially practicing a form of selective enrollment in AP Calculus.
And when we consider the quality of teaching, the paper offers an interesting inference. Based on the pass rates achieved within Detroit's more selective high schools, the authors suggest that their AP Calculus instruction is likely on par with the national average.
Okay, average.
However, Canada's very high pass rate of 97% strongly implies that their instruction is considerably more effective than the average.
So better than average at Canada.
Which brings up another important point to consider when allocating resources and guiding students. Not all AP exams require the same level or type of prior aptitude.
Exactly. The paper then shifts to the implications for how schools might allocate their resources most effectively. They present a table that illustrates how setting different PSAT math cutoff scores for enrolling in AP Calculus in, say, Detroit would affect the number of classes needed, the expected number of successful students in each class, the yield, and the estimated cost for each student who passes.
It really lays bare the trade-offs, doesn't it? If you set a very high PSATM threshold for enrollment, you'll likely have fewer students, a higher pass rate within those classes, and potentially a lower cost per passing score.
Right, but you restrict access.
However, you're also restricting access to the course. Conversely, an open enrollment policy could mean many more classes, a lower average pass rate, and a potentially much higher overall cost per successful student.
Yeah. The paper points out that the national average pass rate for AP exams, which hovers around 62%, seems to represent a sort of balance point between keeping the cost per successful student reasonable and maximizing the total number of students who achieve a passing score.
And the authors make a really crucial suggestion for students who might not be admitted to these very demanding AP courses like calculus. They emphasize the importance of offering appealing alternative courses that might be a better match for their current skill levels and interests.
This is where the discussion about the varying difficulty of different AP exams becomes so relevant. The paper compares AP Calculus to AP Psychology, revealing that a significantly lower PSAT verbal score predicts a 50% chance of passing AP Psychology compared to the PSAT math score needed for the same likelihood of success in AP Calculus.
Ah, that's a key difference. It really highlights that not all AP exams are equally challenging in terms of the prior aptitude they demand.
Right.
And this opens up the possibility for schools to broaden the range of AP courses they offer beyond the traditional high-barrier subjects like calculus and physics. Offering more courses in areas like psychology, English literature, history, or foreign languages could better serve a wider spectrum of student abilities and also align with the diverse expertise of their faculty.
In fact, the paper mentions that after Jaime Escalante left Garfield High School, the school did expand its AP offerings and found success in subjects like AP Spanish. So it's a viable strategy.
Of course, it's vital to remember that the PSAT isn't a flawless crystal ball for predicting success in every single AP exam. The paper includes a really important caution about these connective functions between aptitude and achievement tests.
Yeah, that's crucial. Think of it like this. The skills tested on the PSAT are more closely aligned with success in some AP subjects than others. For example, strong math skills on the PSAT are a good indicator for AP Calculus, but strong verbal skills might not tell us much about how someone will do in, say, AP Studio Art.
Right. Not a perfect match always.
And what's particularly revealing is that for some AP exams, the correlation with the PSAT score is surprisingly weak. The paper specifically points to AP Spanish literature and the PSAT verbal score, showing that a student's performance on the PSAT verbal doesn't seem to be a strong indicator of how they'll do in AP Spanish literature.
They even make the humorous point that you could almost use a student's social security number instead of their PSAT verbal score and get a similar level of predictive power for AP Spanish literature.
Huh. Yeah, basically no correlation. The paper includes an appendix that lists other AP exams where the link with the PSAT is weak or even non-existent, such as AP German and Studio Art.
This really underscores the importance of being thoughtful about how we use the PSAT to advise students or make decisions about resource allocation. While it's a valuable tool in many cases, it's not universally applicable across all AP subjects, is it?
Not at all. So when we actually want to gauge how well a school is doing in its AP program, the paper outlines several key pieces of information we need to look at, going beyond just the raw AP exam scores.
Okay, what are those pieces?
Absolutely. First, you need a clear definition of what you consider success. The paper uses the proportion of students achieving a passing score of 3 or higher. Then you need a way to understand the academic preparation and abilities of the students taking the exams, which the authors have used the SAT-PSE score distribution to represent.
Right, the input.
Next is the statistical relationship between those qualifications and the likelihood of success, which is where their predictive models come into play. You also need to consider how students are selected for AP courses, the recruitment factor again. And finally, you have to account for the often hard-to-measure factors of teaching quality and student motivation.
That makes sense. It's complex. This leads to a really important argument in the paper against judging schools solely on their standardized test results, especially when you're comparing schools that serve very different student populations with different levels of prior academic preparation.
Definitely. The authors advocate strongly for a value-added approach to assessment, one that takes into account the initial skills and aptitude of the students when evaluating how effective a school has been in their academic progress.
It seems fairer, doesn't it?
Much fairer. They suggest that AP exams, precisely because they have a specific curriculum and are taken after students have typically taken the PSAT, can be more effective at distinguishing between students' prior knowledge, the school's efforts in recruiting students to these courses, and the actual quality of teaching and the school environment,
Compared to...
compared to more general aptitude or achievement tests, where those factors are harder to untangle.
Okay. And while we saw the extraordinary impact of a teacher like Jaime Escalante, the paper suggests that, more generally, American high schools seem to be relatively similar in their effectiveness when it comes to teaching a given AP curriculum.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. This might be because AP programs tend to attract highly motivated students and dedicated teachers across different school settings. It's sort of a self-selected group in some ways.
Shifting our focus internationally for a moment, the paper includes a brief but interesting comparison of AP calculus exams with university entrance exams from other countries.
Right. What's quite striking is that the U.S. AP Calculus AB exam is considered the easiest when you look at it on a global scale.
The easiest, really?
Yeah. The BC exam is seen as being in the middle in terms of difficulty, and only the Japanese university entrance exam in mathematics was classified as being in the most challenging category.
Given that the majority of U.S. students who take AP Calculus opt for the AB exam, the paper suggests that this difference in rigor might be one factor that contributes to the U.S. sometimes appearing to perform lower in international comparisons of mathematics achievement.
That makes sense. However, they also point out that the AB exam aligns with the American educational philosophy of focusing more advanced instruction at the college and university level. It's a different system.
So as we bring this all together, the paper's fundamental conclusion is that there are really no educational miracles in the way we might imagine them.
No magic wands?
Exactly. Instead, exceptional achievements, like those seen at Garfield under Escalante, are the result of tremendous effort, talent, and supportive conditions.
And a key message is that tests like the PSAT should serve as valuable tools to guide us toward potential future success, not as rigid barriers that exclude students who might have the capacity to excel with the right encouragement and support.
Guide, not gatekeeper.
Precisely. The authors express a belief that there's a significant opportunity to expand AP achievement across all types of schools in the United States, potentially even doubling the current levels of participation within the next decade.
That's optimistic. However, they also realistically acknowledge that highly demanding courses like AP Calculus will not be accessible to every student, and this is particularly true for some minority student groups.
Right, which reinforces the importance of expanding the range of AP courses offered to include subjects that might be more accessible to a wider range of students. You need options.
And it's a noteworthy finding from other research cited in the paper that PSAT scores are actually better predictors of how a student will perform in AP courses than their high school grades or even recommendations from their teachers.
That's quite counterintuitive, isn't it? You'd think grades or teacher insights would be stronger.
You would. And the paper includes an appendix that lists the specific PSAT score that predicts a 50% chance of passing each AP exam, which could be a really useful resource for academic advising for counselors and students.
Absolutely. Ultimately, the authors view the advanced placement system as a positive force for driving educational improvement, with a long-term aspiration of reaching world-class standards in various academic disciplines.
They even share a thought-provoking anecdote about the philosopher John Stuart Mill and his father's emphasis on intellectual challenge,
Oh, yeah.
suggesting that aiming high with the informed use of aptitude assessments is a far better approach than setting our sights too low.
Challenge is good. So, to summarize this deep dive, it's clear that the PSAT offers valuable insights into a student's likelihood of success in AP courses. This understanding has significant implications for how we advise students, how schools allocate their limited resources, and how we interpret the landscape of educational achievement and the persistent challenges that exist across different educational environments.
And while aptitude tests are undoubtedly useful tools, this paper makes it clear that they are just one piece of a much larger puzzle. Factors such as the quality of teaching, a student's own intrinsic motivation, and the availability of a diverse array of AP course options are absolutely essential for helping all students reach their full academic potential.
Which raises a crucial question for you, our listener, to ponder. How can we best strike a balance between offering selective enrollment in highly challenging courses and ensuring broader access to a wide spectrum of AP opportunities for students with diverse aptitude levels and interests across the varied landscape of our educational system?
Yeah, and what specific role should standardized tests play in helping us navigate this complex but vital balance? It's certainly something worth considering.